Hello everyone, welcome to automation learning session. Java Refresher is the first course that we have. As part of this training, we are going to learn about all these topics. So this is part 1 video. In this we will learn about the introduction to Java. Then we will see classes and objects, then constructors and various data types. Starting with Java. Java is an object-oriented programming language, just like Python, C++, Ruby, and so on. Okay, so whenever we call any programming language as object-oriented, it will have all these concepts or principles. So, such as data encapsulation, data abstraction, inheritance, and polymorphism. Okay, so we are going to see all these concepts with the examples as we progress with this training. So let us start with the introduction to Java. So as I said, it is a object-oriented programming language. So Java deals with objects. So anything you create in Java, it will be object, and we are going to deal with objects. Okay, so in Java mainly there are two things. One is called as JDK, Java Development Kit, and another other is called as JRE, Java Runtime Environment. Okay, so JDK generally it is used by Java developers who is developing the tool or developing the code. Okay, mainly for the development purposes. JRE can be mainly used for run purposes. So whoever wants to run Java programs or run Java tools, they can simply have JRE installed in their machines. Okay, so now this is a link which you can take, and in this you can follow the steps to install JDK or JRE. I recommend install JDK in your machine. You can go for latest version JDK 8 8U181 that you can go for, and you can have it installed in your OS. And once it is installed, you can come to command prompt, and you can check whether it is added in this class path or not. So you can check that by using java space minus version. So when you do that, you can see that it should be showing Java version, a particular Java that is available in your operating system. Okay, so once it is there, that means your Java is set up. Okay, so after that is done, we require IDE to work on Java. IDE is nothing but integrated development environment. Okay, so by using IDE, you can type the code, you can compile, you can build, and you can also run your programs. Okay, so IDE gives all the flexibility to do all the job in one place. So generally you can go for any IDEs. One of the popular IDE is Eclipse Ide. Like this, there are other IDEs available like IntelliJ IDEA and so on. Okay, so as part of this training, we are going to use Eclipse IDE. So I have Eclipse IDE available in my machine, that is Eclipse Neon. I'm going to use that for this training purpose. So whenever you have Eclipse installed, just give the folder path in which all the projects that you're going to create will be available. Then you can click on OK, and it will open the Eclipse project for you. So once Eclipse is open, first step that we are going to follow is create a new project. So you can right click on the left hand side area, and you can select new Java project, and you can call that as I'll call it as Java training. Okay, and I'll say next, and I'll say finish. Before that, one step I want to show you. So whichever JRE or JDK that you installed, you will be seeing that here. You can see that which execution environment it will use for the running purposes, so that you can see it here. And if you have multiple Java JRE installed, you can choose it from the list, whichever you want you can choose, but recommend it is use the latest one that you have installed. Okay, so then you can say next, and then you can say finish. Okay, so once you have created project, so next step would be to create package. Basically package is nothing but group of, basically it's a grouping. So you can create package to group your classes. Okay, so let me create a package as day 1, or I'll call it as session 1 for the time being. Okay, so I'll say finish. So this is the package. Generally, package naming convention is small letters. It can start with small letters, and you can give any name to the folder. Okay, so once you have given the package name, basically you are going to group your classes into it. Okay, so you can structure your classes in different packages. Okay, so once your package is created, you can create a new class by using uh, new and class. Okay, and let me call it as first class, and I will also include main. Okay, so we'll discuss about main as well. Now coming back to the slide, so we'll just quickly discuss what we have gone through so far. So we have learned that Java is an object-oriented programming language. Java is platform independent. That means the code that you have developed in Java in Windows operating system can be run on Solaris or Linux or any other operating systems as long as there is JRE, specific JRE installed in that OS. Okay. So generally what happens is any code that you create in Java will be with the extension .java, and whenever you are going to compile the code by using javac compiler, it will have dot class, that is the byte code which will be created, and then you can execute your code by using java command. Okay, so all these things are done by using the IDE, so we don't have to worry about how do I compile the code, how do I execute the code, because everything is taken care in the IDE itself. Suppose you are not using IDE, then you have to follow the steps to compile by using javac and to execute by using java command. Okay, so one thing that we need to know is JRE comprises of JVM. JVM is nothing but Java Virtual Machine, and it will also have set of libraries. This JRE varies from operating system to operating system. Okay, so the respective libraries that will be available for different operating system, but this dot class that is created can be used in any operating system, but by using respective JRE we will be able to execute the Java files. Okay, so now we are coming to class. We have just created simple class, so now let us understand what is class. Class is a blueprint or template or recipe for the object. So any object, just you think about any object, any real-time object. You can think about animal or books, or you can think about shopping cart application. So anything you think about, basically we can use class to create objects. So basically in class we are going to represent the blueprint, how or what all things we want in our class. So basically class will contain state and behavior. Okay, and object is nothing but the instance of class. So whenever you create an instance of a class, that is the object. Okay, so as I said, class contains state and behavior. Okay, so let us come back here and let us try to see how does the class declaration look like. Okay, so we can see whenever you create any class, by default it will have package. Package is the mandatory statement that has to be given at the top if you have a package. Always there will be a package created, and inside the package only you are going to create a class. So this has to be followed, and you cannot create uh, directly classes outside the package. Okay, so package declaration will be there. So package, under whichever package it belongs to, give that package name. And class declaration is something like this: public class name. So here public is the access modifier. We'll discuss more in detail. So this is syntax for class declaration. And public static void main. Void main can, this main method can be used for running purposes. So you want to run any Java code, or you want to test your Java code, you need to have main. Okay, so that is why we will have main. So main is a method in Java. So method is nothing but function. Okay, so which we can use for defining any functionality. Okay, so I'll say function or method. Okay, so a main is one of the methods. Okay, so now let us quickly have a simple code. I'll just write sysout. Sysout can be used for writing the output to the console. You want to write the output to the console, you can use sysout. Sysout is the shortcut. You can type sysout and then you can say control space from the keyboard. Then you will get system.out.println. Basically this will print to the console. So console we can see at the bottom here. So you can print, you can say like welcome to this training. Okay, so and I'll just save it. Make sure you save your class. And now let's run this program. How do you run this program? You can come to run as, and then you can select Java application. Okay, so you can see that it is printing in the console. So it has run the program. So what all things happened when we have run this code? So we have typed this code, and then when I said control yes, it compiled the code, and by using Java C compiler, and dot class, that is the bytecode of this particular class file, got created in the folder structure. And then that bytecode was used by JRE for execution purposes when I was running this code. So all these things happened. Now let us see where this dot class is available. Okay, so to see that, just go to Java training, this particular folder. I will go and I will find where that is available. Okay, so when I have come to src session 1, I can see the source code that is having .java extension. Now I'll go back one step and I'll go to bin, and I can expand the package, and I can see here first class dot class. So this is nothing but the bytecode which got created at this particular time after the compilation happened. So compilation, only if the compilation is successful, then only it will create a dot class file. If compilation is not successful, then we will be getting error in the IDE. It will show the error. For example, let me say I'll say I have declared something like this. Okay, and I have set control S. So now we can see that it is showing some red mark. It shows that syntax error. Insert colon to complete the local variable declaration statement. So now when I said control S, it has not compiled because there was a compilation error. And now if I come back and if I check the folder again, it is still having the older date modified shown because the file is still not compiled. So now if I say control yes, and if I come back, I can see that it is showing the latest timestamp for the dot class because it got compiled successfully. Okay, so this is the basic Java program that we have created, and we can see it is working fine. Okay, so as we move forward with this training, I will show you how we can debug. I feel debugging is very important in Java, or whenever you are working on automation projects. So if you don't know debugging, then you will have to spend a lot of time fixing the problems. Okay, so as we move forward, I'll show you some tips and tricks about debugging techniques. Okay, so we'll see that today before we close this session 1. Okay, so now let's move on to the next topic. The next topic is various data types. What are the different data types that are available in Java? In Java, there are primitive data types which are provided for your coding purposes, such as byte, short, int, long, float, double, char, boolean. All these are the keywords. So we cannot use these keywords for declaring variables. Okay, so these keywords we can use while declaring our data types, depending on the requirement that we have. There are mainly three types of variable possible. Variable types, one can be local variables, instance variables, and class variables. Local variables are local to a loop or local to a particular method. Okay, those things can be called as local variables. Local variables gets created and will be died when the method or when the block of statement got completed execution. Okay, so local variable will be alive only for that particular loop or for that particular method inside which it is created. That is local variable. Now let us see how to create a local variable. So generally you will create local variable inside a method, or you will be creating local variable inside a loop. Okay, so now since this is a method, as we discussed, main is a method, let me create a variable. I'll create a variable here. I'll call it as int I, and I'll say semicolon, and I have set control F. Okay, so now this is the local variable that I have created. Okay, this is example for local variable. Okay, and now always remember that whenever you have created a variable, let us try to print this variable. So let's say I want to print this variable, and whenever I'm trying to print, it says it gives the error, compilation error, saying local variable may not have been initialized. So what that means is, always remember, whenever you create a local variable, you have to initialize that local variable. So if you don't initialize it, compiler will show you the compilation error saying this particular local variable has not been initialized. Okay, so even you could have noticed, when I have created the local variable, when I move the mouse over on the warning, that is yellow color, it is saying local variable is not used, it says. So this is just like information for you that this variable you have created but you have not used. Now let me initialize it with some value. I'll call it as 10. Okay, and now let me try to run this, and whenever I'm using it, that warning is gone, and I'm going to run this program. I can see that it is printing the local variable, and after this is done, now this variable got created here, and it was used for printing purposes here. And after this particular function or method, if I'm trying to use this local variable, it cannot be used because it is expired in that particular method itself. Okay, that is local variable. Okay, now let's move on to another type of variable, that is instance variables. Instance variables are the variable that you create just after the class. Okay, so we have a class here. So if I create variable just after this class, they are the instance variable. Those becomes instance variable. Especially instance variables are non-static. Okay, so we'll discuss what is static and what is non-static. So instance variables are non-static. So let us create some instance variable here. So I'll create okay, so for that, what I'll do, I'll create a new class. Okay, for our understanding, I'm going to create new class. I'll say new, and I'll say class, and I will create for simplicity, I'm going to create employee for us to understand. Okay, and I'll have main also defined. I'll say finish. Okay, so now in this after the class declaration, I am going to create let's say one variable. I'll create one variable with the int, okay, employee serial number. Okay, always remember that whenever you declare any instance variable or local variable, you have to make sure it is with the small letters. Okay, variables you can declare with small letters, class name starts with capital letters, and if you have a combination of multiple words in a variable declaration, then make sure it is camel cased so that it increases readability. Okay, so for example here, let's say we are going to define employee serial number. I'll say 1234 is the employee serial number. Okay, so this is nothing but instance variable now. So what is the life of instance variable? Instance variable is available throughout the class. So anywhere I want to use this variable, I can use it. I can use it in any methods. I can use it in main and all other stuff. Okay, so that is the life of instance variable. Now let us create one more instance variable. I will create with string. So we'll discuss more about string. We are going to have separate topic for that. So by the way, for the time being, string is not a primitive data type. Okay, so string is a class. Okay, so we'll discuss that in detail later on. So string, I'll call it as employee name equal to, I'm going to give Albert. Okay, so this is the employee name. Okay, now let's say that yeah, so again this becomes, what is this? This is also a instance variable. Okay, because these are non-static and they are declared directly inside the class. Okay, so these are the instance variables. Okay, so now we have learned what is instance variable, and now we are going to learn about class variables. Before that, so why it is called as instance variable is only when you create instance of that class, then those variables can be used. Okay, so that is why it is called as instance variable. Okay, for example, let me create one more class. Okay, yeah, I'll create a class and I will call it as print employee. Okay, and I'll have main also, and let's say we want to print all the employee details, okay, from the employee class. So how do we get the employee details? The employee details are available in these two instance variables, that is employee serial number and employee name. We want to get those two details, and how we can get it here? We can get it here by creating the object, or creating an instance of that class. How do you create an instance of that class? You can create something like this. You can have that class name like employee, then you can have the reference variable, I can call it as emp, equal to, then you can say new employee, and then you can say open bracket and close bracket. Okay, so like that we can give me a moment, I'll just define open bracket and close bracket. Yeah, so it is defined. So we have created object. Now let us understand what this statement is. This statement is basically to create an instance of the class. So it has created instance of employee class with reference variable emp. And what is an object here? Here new employee is the object. Okay, not emp. Emp is not the object. New employee is the object. Emp is the reference variable that is holding the object. Okay, so now if I have to print the employee details, I'll say sysout just like previous program, and I have to just use emp, and I have to use emp dot, I can have employee serial number. Okay, and let me just give that here with the double quotes. First I'll say employee serial, and then I'll give plus sign here after double quotes. Why plus sign is? Plus sign is concatenation operator in Java. Okay, so you want to have variable printed along with some message, then you can use plus sign, so it will incorporate that. Similarly, I want to have the employee name also printed, so I'll say employee name dot, I'll say employee name here. Okay, so this is how I did. So now we are going to get that detail, and we are going to print it here. Now let's run this program and see, run as Java application, and I can see that it is printing employee serial and employee name. Okay, so now if I have not created this object, if I have not created instance of this class, could I use it? Could I use those variables here? No. Can I directly use it like employee dot? Can I use it? No, I cannot use, because they are instance variables. Only way to access instance variable is to create an instance of that class, and then use that reference object, then use dot, and then access the variable details. Okay, this is how we can get the details of employee. Okay, so I think now you are clear with the instance variables. Okay, now third thing is class variables. Basically class variables are also called as static. Class variables are independent of instance. That means you don't have to create an instance of class to access those variables. They are called as class variables. They are directly available with your class. Okay, and they will have a keyword called as static. Okay, so now let's come back to our employee class, and let me just save this print employee. Come back to employee class, and let us define one more. I will call it as static. I will call it as string, and I will call it as organization equal to XYZ. Okay, so let's say this employee with this serial number belongs to this organization, and I have defined this with static keyword just like before instance variable, but it has one additional keyword called as static. Okay, so now since it is declared with static, this is nothing but class variable. Similarly, you can create class methods also. Okay, so we'll discuss those things later. So this is class variable, and this class variable can be directly accessed without instance of you don't have to create instance of the class. You can directly access, in fact. But if you have created instance of class, also not an issue. You can access access the static or class variables with the instance also, instance operator also, like emp dot, I'll say org employee organization. Okay, so it is accessible, but you can see there is one more warning. What it is saying is the static field employee.org should be accessed in a static way. Okay, so the best practice in Java, what Java says is, if you have a static variable or static method, you don't have to create instance of the class. Directly give the class name dot and access that particular method or the variable. Okay, so here we can say instead of emp, I will use employee. Okay, and then I'm going to print it. Okay, so one second, let me just see, there is one error. I'll just, okay, I think I have not saved this class. I have saved it now, and it is accessed directly with the dot operator. That is why this is a class variable. So this is one more type of variable. So we have discussed, we can see the output here. We have discussed three type of variables: local variables, instance variable, and class variables. Okay, so I hope you are clear with this topic. And next what we have is constructors. So we'll discuss constructors now. And why constructors? Okay, so basically constructors are used for constructing your objects, constructing your variables. Okay, so now let's say let's see that we have a class here employee, and the employee has all these details. Okay, but these details are hard coded. It is having employee serial number equal to 1234, employee name equal to Albert. Okay, and all this information is hard coded. Okay, so now what I want to do is, as a programmer, I want to have these values set whenever the object is created. Instead of setting these values in a hard-coded fashion, I want to have these values set whenever the object is getting created. Okay, so how we can do that? We can do that by using constructor. So what is the syntax of constructor? How do you create a constructor? Constructor will have same name as class name. Okay, like here, let me just declare a constructor. I'll say public, and I'll say employee, and it can have any parameters, or it can have no parameters also. There is no rule that it should have parameters. Okay, so this is one constructor that we have created now. Okay, so like this you can create constructor with parameters or without parameters. Currently this is without parameters, and what I could do is, since what we learnt is uh, by using constructors we can use to construct our instance variables and class variables. So you can have these values. What I could do, I could have these values. I'll just copy this, I'll paste it here, and then I'll remove these values from here. So I'm just declaring the variables here, and I am initializing them whenever the object is going to be created. Okay, so we'll see that and we'll also understand. Okay, so by the way, one second. Yeah, let me just change this. Yeah, okay, fine. So now I think we are good. So whenever it is going to create a object of employee, it is going to set all these values. Okay, so that is what it does. So now let us come back to our print employee, and you can see now what change happened in this program. So earlier, the whenever the class was executing, it was it was creating the object. The object was created, but at that point of time it has not initialized the variable. When it initialized the variable is it got initialized in the beginning itself in the program here. In this particular statement, it got initialized and then whenever you're calling here emp serial number, emp employee name, employee.org, so it just access them. But now what change happened is, uh, whenever it is creating object that is here in this line, whenever you are saying employee emp equal to new employee, so whenever you say new employee, it is calling the constructor. It calls this constructor and it initializes all your variables, and then those variables are printed here. So that is the difference has happened. Okay, so one more thing that you can know is, for any class that you create, there will be a default constructor with no parameters. Okay, for example, let me create a class called as test class. Okay, so now for this class also, by default there is a constructor with no parameters. Okay, so that constructor is available, that is hidden, you cannot see it, but it is available inside. Okay, so whenever you're creating the object of this class with the new operator, when you say test class test equal to new test class, open bracket close bracket, for that it is going to call that constructor internally. Okay, so that is about the constructor. So now coming back to this particular class, so in this particular constructor, what happened, it has initialized to some default values, let's say. Okay, so now let's say you have requirement, you have another requirement, when you want to create object and you want to initialize with your own values. Let's say you are going to have more number of employees joining in your organization, and you want to have employee serial number, employee name, organization name passed as parameter. Okay, so in such cases you can create parameterized constructors. How we can create is, again, same syntax. I'll say public employee, and I'll have open bracket, and let's say I want to have employee serial number. So employee serial number is with integer. I'll say int emp serial, comma, then emp name, I'll say string, it is of string type, so I'll say emp employee name, comma, I'll say string org. Okay, so it is up to you to decide how many parameter constructor you want to create depending on your requirement. Okay, so this is an automation requirement also. Suppose you are working on a Selenium based project, and you want to create a constructor for some specific purpose. Let's say you want to have the browser to be initialized to Firefox, or browser to be initialized to something else. So all these things you want to do whenever it is creating an object. Okay, so in such purposes you can create constructor and have it initialized with some values. Okay, so here now we have to initialize with the value that we are passing as parameters. So I'll just have them declared. I'll say employee serial number equal to what is employee serial number equal to employee serial, and then we have employee name equal to, sorry, it is emp name, that is the instance variable, equal to employee name which you are going to pass, and then we have org, I'll call it as org name here, and I'll say here org equal to org name. Okay, so you might have noticed whenever I'm typing few letters and then I'm doing control space actually. So control space is the content assist in Eclipse Ide that will help you with the suggestions. Okay, so like these are things you can do. For example, if I type or and if I say control space, I can see what are the related things that are starting with or. So it gives the suggestion, like it says that there is a variable called as org created, there is org name available, and there are some packages and other things. So it is giving all the suggestions for you, whichever you think is suitable for you, you can choose that. Okay, so now I'll say control S. So this is how it is initialized. Now come back to our print employee, and so this was printing the default employee details. So let's come back and run it. It was printing default employee details. So now let's say we have new employee joining our organization, and we want to have that employee details set and printed. So now let's come back here, employee, and let's give the serial number. I'll call it as 1234 1235, and then what is the employee name? I'll call it as Charles. And what is the organization? Let's say same organization is joining. Okay, so we are creating a new object, so I'll call it as emp2. And now we can simply use all these sysout statements. I'll just copy it. So we'll discuss more about organizing these things, how we can reuse the code in the next classes. So as of now we are just going to print it. So I'll say employee2 and employee.org. So I can say emp2.org because again this we are passing here. Okay, so now let's run this program, and we can see that it has printed 1235 Charles and XYZ who has joined our organization newly. Okay, so this is how we can make use of constructors. Constructor is very powerful. So we can use it to initialize our instance variables. We don't have to initialize at the top. We can use constructors to initialize instead. Okay, so we'll discuss more about constructors in the upcoming classes. We'll discuss about super and other keywords. There are many more things to come. So as of now, this is for the first session. So let us discuss about the points here. So there will be default constructor available hidden even if it is not created. That is what we discussed. Constructor will have the same name as class name. We discussed constructor overloading is possible. Yes, so here we have seen that there are two constructors created. That is, one is public employee with no parameters and public employee with 3 parameters. This is nothing but constructor overloading. What is the meaning of overloading? What is overloading? Overloading is you are defining the same name but you are having different parameters. Okay, so that is nothing but overloading in Java. Okay, so similar concept will be applicable for your method overloading also. We'll discuss that in detail later. Okay, and then use this keyword to call overloaded constructor. So so if you have overloaded constructor, then you can use this keyword. So for example, okay, so if my requirement is to call this particular, this is the default constructor, right? So let's say I want to call it here. Okay, so when I say like this, if I say like this, what it means is when I say this, it is going to call this constructor. That is the default. It calls that and it will be running here. So now if I come back and if I run it, we'll see some additional things. We can see that in fact there are no additional things because what happened is it called this method, it called this constructor, sorry, and it has initialized with all these values, and in this anyway it is getting re-initialized with the values that we are passing. Okay, so sometimes if you have requirement to call your main constructor, then you can use this operator and you can call your constructor. Okay, so we have seen all that. So now let's come back and see what all we have learned. We have learned introduction to Java. We have seen that Java is platform independent and Java is object oriented programming language. Since it is object oriented programming language, it supports data encapsulation, data abstraction, inheritance and polymorphism. We have seen that IDE we can use for effective code writing, and there is JDK and JRE. JDK is for Java Development Kit for programmers for writing programs, JRE for execution purposes mainly. Classes and objects. Class is an instance, basically class is an blueprint, and object is an instance of class, and classes basically contain state and behavior. Okay, so state is nothing but all the variables that we have discussed, that is the state, and behavior is nothing but the method. So method we'll discuss later in the next session, and we have discussed various data types, and we have discussed local variables, instance variable and class variables, and then we have also discussed about constructors. Constructors we can use to construct the instance variables that we have created. Okay, so with that I'm closing this session, and we'll have the next session with the remaining topics. I hope you are going to get benefited with this kind of sessions. Thank you so much.